Now, it is big news that Nigeria has officially joined the BRICS group of nations as partner country. Of course, and it's pushing for international collaboration. Of course, Nigeria officially announced as a partner, of the state of BRICS group, joining countries like Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Of course, Nigeria is looking to leverage BRICS for economic opportunities, trade, investment, energy, security, and a host of other things that it is pushing to gain at this time.
Well, our guest is Abel Ludi, he's a chartered accountant and an economic analyst who will help us navigate what this means, joining the BRICS as a developing nation. You would recall just not too long ago, the Nigerian government opted to engage the Chinese government over the currency swap deal, which generated a lot of reaction. But let's welcome our guest, Abel Ludi. Good morning, welcome to Rise and Shine.
It's glad to be back. It's good to be back on your program.
Good to have you back, and it's the first for the year. So happy New Year!
Happy
How is
New Year.
2025?
Happy New Year, Biden.
All right, then.
Okay, so the very first thing I like to ask, Nigeria, the Nigerian government has received with great excitement the welcoming of the nation into the BRICS. I mean, you're looking at developing countries seeking to have some level of political engagement and economic power, to be able to stand against wealthier nations, or to be able to have some depth of bargaining power against developed nations and world powers. What is your reaction to Nigeria joining the BRICS?
Well, for me, I think personally, I think we shouldn't get too excited because as a country we need to know our greatest and also look at our long-term survival. Recently, President Donald Trump said for countries trying to move away from the door from the U.S. dollar, that it will increase tariffs. It will increase tariffs on imports from their countries, and this actually will frustrate trade. And United States of America is arguably Nigeria's biggest trade partner. The United Kingdom, for instance, which is the member of the United Kingdom of the G7, is one of Nigeria's biggest trade partners as well. So we need to weigh the implications. What are the gains of joining BRICS, and what are the losses we incur if we follow the trajectory of what BRICS is looking at, which is the dollarization and creating an alternative to the G7 and the UN and the Bretton Woods institutions. So we need to actually weigh them, because we've seen cases where Argentina had actually lobbied for BRICS membership, or at some point, decided to look, this is not in the best interest of the people of Argentina, and they declined membership. Saudi Arabia is still observing. So we need to weigh the implications for us. We do not want to be part of an anti-West coalition, you understand, which would not be the interest of the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That's my opinion on the BRICS membership.
Okay, so there's a lot of things. Let's look into what are some of the possible gains that Nigeria will have as becoming the ninth nation amongst the BRICS. We also know that Uganda recently joined, so we're seeing more African nations trying to get on the BRICS bloc. But what are some of the possible gains that this could bring to Nigeria before we even look at balancing out the narrative?
I think for me, one of the biggest gains would be access to funding for infrastructural development. BRICS has set up a parallel development organization, the New Development Bank. You understand that has funding up to about 100 billion for infrastructure financing. So joining BRICS will open up avenue for Nigeria to seek funding at a cheaper price for development. And also, if you look at the contingent reserve arrangement of the BRICS, is similar to the special drawing rights of the IMF, where countries can draw, in terms of when they have a currency crisis, and it is proposed that the contingent reserve arrangement will be more equitable than the special drawing rights of the IMF, where some bigger countries with bigger contribution have the larger drawing rights from the special drawing rights. While under the contingent arrangement, there'll be some form of equity. So meaning that if there's a currency crisis, Nigeria will have a buffer, ability to draw from its contingent reserve rights. And also there will also be the options of seamless bilateral trade through the instrumentality of the BRICS Pay, which will rival the SWIFT network, which would mean international trade can be done in the domestic currencies of BRICS countries, and also it will also foster currency swap transactions like Nigeria had in China. So these are ways we can, and it will also reduce the pressure on the naira, in terms of sourcing for dollar to finance international trade. But by and large, those are the benefits. Access to funding for infrastructure, stability, ability to draw on your contingent reserve rights, and alternative to SWIFT, if it's in the interest of the country. And those are the basic, for me, the basic advantages.
The expanded group of the BRICS have a combined population of about 3.5 billion and about 45% of the world's inhabitants, and that translates to a combined worth of about 28.5 trillion US dollars, which makes up 28% of the global economy. Nigeria has joined, and the question Nigerians are asking at this point is, with all of the conversations, with all of the data and the statistics and indices, which seems to be on the good side, especially considering Nigeria as one of the key players and emerging economy within the African continent, what are the first the first line of gains that we will have as a country? Because yes, it's good for us to join the BRICS summit, like I highlighted, but what are the immediate gains that Nigerians would be able to experience as a result of the Nigerian government joining BRICS?
Well, the immediate gains, the immediate gains, like I said earlier, is maybe Nigeria is in their need of infrastructure, infrastructure funding. And the new development bank will open up opportunity for Nigeria to source cheaper funding, from as against what we get from the World Bank and the International Development Association. So on the immediate, it is we have the access, and also we don't have a currency crisis at the moment because with the deregulation in full place, they don't have currency pressure. But maybe if we were to have currency pressures, we would be able to access the CRA, and also maybe if Nigeria signs good bilateral agreements with each member of BRICS and a currency swap agreement, on the immediate, you might see an increase in the value of the naira, and it also opens a new market for Nigerian manufacturers. Because if we are not exporting and doing business within the community, you understand, we might not be at any form of, might not gain. If we join BRICS, and looking for only funding for infrastructure, only accessing CRA, and we make these member countries, a dumping ground for their own product, we might not be going anywhere.
Okay, so part of the things that you have highlighted, which is the fact that Nigeria is going to have access to more funding for infrastructure development and several other things. A critical problem that we have for Nigeria and most African nations is our strong leaning on some of these blocks to keep borrowing and borrowing. And sometimes we're not putting them in projects that can reduce our, debt burden. Remember, the indices have already said that Nigeria is at over 142 trillion in debt. Is there a way that Nigeria can be wise in its relation and in its transactions on the BRICS group of nations now, instead of going cap in hand looking like beggars in front of the rest of the nation? Why don't we actually develop infrastructure and people?
Well, thanks for that question. The international community is actually responsible for the development and growth of any nation. You understand? The growth and development of a nation depends on its people. You understand? You know, in Nigeria, sometimes we borrow to fund frivolous programs like conditional cash grants. While our infrastructure suffer. You understand? The role of the government is to borrow to fund critical infrastructure that will aid trade and businesses, such that when you tax those businesses, you have the capacity to pay back the loan you've taken. What we don't have, we don't borrow for such projects in Nigeria, we borrow for frivolous programs, programs that do not yield enough resources to pay back themselves. Meanwhile, other countries, they look at, they join this multilateral institutions, borrow from critical infrastructure. And this critical infrastructure is how it fosters trade or reduce the cost of production in their country, and they make more money, they're able to export and make money. So I think that question is a function of the people planning our economic planners. Yes, that they should ask us, there should be a seriousness to ask ourselves. Let's analyze Nigeria's loan portfolio and how many of these projects that we utilize this funding for can actually pay themselves off and can foster businesses are kind of critical to businesses to survive and can generate resources to pay their loans back. If you look at them, most of these programs are socialist projects to borrow from. The good thing is if we are moving away from the IMF and the World Bank, who like to borrow African countries for funds for socialist projects, we should also be wary that we don't go into BRICS and the development bank and begin to borrow to fund socialist projects. It should be for critical infrastructure that has the ability to pay itself.
Okay, so the BRICS have set up their own new development bank to lend money to build infrastructure and all other things that member countries would need. But I'll take your mind back to some conversations the National Assembly members had over the course of the week, and that is their expression of the fact that they lack confidence in the federal government of Nigeria under President Tinubu's administration to diversify the nation's economy. And you've highlighted the fact that for us to be able to utilize our membership or the alliance with BRICS, we have got to think out of the box. So my next line of question is, what would you propose Nigeria does differently in order for us to make the best use of a membership with the alliance?
Well, I think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has actually defied a lot of critics, You know, at the time I discussed with you about the issue of deregulation, and you can see that where former leaders have failed to tread, you understand, President Bola Ahmed and tread that path. And today you can see that two things are critical. Nigeria is producing refined petroleum products, and the volume of petroleum product consumption has reduced, which shows that there was a whole lot of fraud subsidy regime. And Nigerians are getting used to the fact that fuel is 900 and 1,100. And maybe you could find, I think there was a recent award of a license for a refinery, 10,000 barrels at the refinery in Delta State. And also see the Boa refinery coming. There'll be competition. So I think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a brave politician, you understand, and is willing to make critical decisions, that will move the country forward. Now, let's go back to the issue of BRICS and what we can do differently. I think if you check the IFC, International Financial Corporation website, you see a lot of developmental projects that are being funded in the West. And I've wondered why Nigeria has not been able to access the loan from the World Bank. The idea to form a railway network connecting industrial zones in Nigeria together to reduce the cost of transportation and to reduce the wear and tear on our roads. So those are projects that will filter trade and payback. So I think the president and his minister, especially Minister of Finance and Minister of National Planning, should be looking at a funding window, to connect Port Harcourt to Nnewi, from Nnewi to maybe Lagos, then we should have a road system that connects Kano to Apapa port. There should be a rail system from Kano that also connects to Oman, connects south. So you connect the main business hubs in Nigeria. And when you do that, you can legislate and say cargo, higher than a certain weight, should go by weight, you should go by rail. And when you do that, your rural infrastructure, survives over a longer time. So my opinion is, if we're joining BRICS and we have access to more funding, we have a buffer against preventing crisis, which is the CRA. If we're borrowing, it should be critical infrastructure, power, other forms of energy, that refining capacity, transportation. And when we make tax revenue, we can invest tax revenue on socialist projects like health, education, and additional cash transfers. But we shouldn't borrow to fund socialist projects. So I think that is what President Bola needs to do, and his team looking at that. There's an open window for us to do bigger things, but these bigger things must be in the critical sectors of the economy that leads to being an investment destination for foreign direct investments.
Okay, so we see that as we are heading on now with more inclusion of nations in the BRICS. The BRICS itself is rising in terms of global political economy. It's going to be competing with other, blocks across the world. Now, one of the problems that Nigeria is going to face is how it is going to balance the matter of interest. Now, remember that Nigeria is even the chairman on the ECOWAS bloc, which also comes with its own benefits on the West African, coast. And there is also Nigeria trying to leverage all the diplomatic ties with other parts of the world, especially the West. How do you see that Nigeria is going to be able to balance the question of interest across all these subgroups that it is trying to align itself with? Do we have the political will and the economic intelligence to be, to gain more than we lose with these alliances?
Well, I think for groups like this, you're allowed to cherry pick policies that you want to adopt, for your country. India and China were members of BRICS, but it didn't stop them from taking up arms against themselves in 2020. You understand? So it's not as if the BRICS members themselves don't have their individual challenges, and it's as if they agree on all principles. I think, for me, I think Nigeria should embrace the economic benefits, you understand, and jettison the political undertones, the political implications, because for me, I think BRICS is a China and Russia front, to challenge the established Western order. And Nigeria still needs to gain a lot, from its Western counterparts, than from Russia and China. You understand? And we need to also look at the interests of these countries. Do they have genuine interest for Africa? You understand? Unlike the West. See, the United Nations, the United States of America is pulling out of the World Health Organization, and World Health Organization is shivering because the US, provides major funding for these UN organizations that actually help Africa. So if we could look at the BRICS, I think Nigeria should, look at cherry pick the economic benefit and not join in the politics of the global South against the West. I think that for me, we should leave the politics out of it and focus on the economy, because we have 200 million Nigerians to take care of, and not join ourselves with global politics.
Critical. I think also that one of the opportunities that this brings to the table is platforms of scholarship and some form of intermeddling between the youths of this country. Now let's look at how this BRICS alliance for Nigeria and the next generation of politicians, of business moguls and economic experts, how, this, joining this alliance, how does it impact on the next generation of Nigerians? Because it depends on how well this administration and other administrations going forward will leverage on this opportunity. The impact will tell generations later.
Well, the impact is we will see a lot of Nigerians, maybe through bilateral agreements, going to school in these BRICS nations. However, the challenge is we need to understand that the West, as it is, is where most of the technology comes from, and where critical innovation that is being made by the global South comes from. So Nigeria actually needs a mixture of the West and the global, in cooperation with the global South to develop in the right direction. However, as against leaders, we have leaders who study in these countries who come back into Nigeria with a different mindset, a different mindset of countries who have started from the same background with Nigeria and who have made it, or countries who are aspiring to be great, the mindset that we can make it happen in our country. And also have a mix of people who have studied abroad in Nigeria who have a different mindset. And Nigeria becomes, or our National Assembly, our Federal Executive Council becomes a melting point of ideas from different parts of the world. And I think that will push us, towards having a national identity in terms of our economic blueprint for the future. You understand? So it's for me, if we adopt maybe the economic part of it and the experiences without taking sides, in the global order, whether we want to fully side with the South or fully side with the West. If we maintain a balanced attitude, and cherry pick what is in the interest of Nigeria, I think we'll be better for it, in the near future.
Just before we let you go, Mr. Udi, what would be your advice generally to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his cabinet as we progress into the next line of international politics? You're looking at a President Donald Trump who is focused on enriching his nation. You're looking at Nigeria with the BRICS alliance. You're looking at conversations just recently shared at Davos, Switzerland, where the South African president, who is leading a delegation, also talked about what the African continent seeks to prioritize in terms of education, health, welfare, and infrastructural development. What would be your advice to the present administration?
Well, I would tell the game, not in refined petroleum products, for instance, and the should actually be channeled for funding trade. So to ensure that at least the exchange rate have an effect on the general pricing, because at the moment people can save in the economy. The interest rate, is too alarming, and while the inflation rate has the solution, to drive inflation down, and it is biting on the people. And when the people are dissatisfied, they might have some strong economic policies that might impact likely in the future. But if people can take care of themselves now, they will generally complain. So I think you should look at driving down inflation. And the best way to drive down inflation is to get more with the CBN to ensure that FX is channeled towards industries that can now produce local markets, and drive down costs.
All right, I'm sure that this and more will help the federal government, to take better advantage of these, new inclusion on the BRICS alliance, as it were. Thank you so much, Mr. Abel Ude, who himself is a chartered accountant and financial expert. Thank you so much for coming to Rise and Shine this morning.